Welcome to my kitchen and the conversation we're having here today. I am so glad that you joined me, and today we have with us a lovely guest. This is Suzanne David, and Suzanne has a certain passion in her life that I am pleased that she's bringing. But the topic that we're going to be talking about today is one of those that's very difficult for me to talk about, and it might be difficult for you to hear about. But Suzanne, you're a registered nurse.
That's correct.
And you've done some other training?
I have done, I just finished my master's in public health, and I've been working with the Sheriff's Department here in our county, San Bernardino, with human trafficking.
Human trafficking. Human trafficking means what? Driving people around on buses?
No. That's what we call modern-day slavery. These people are forced either to have being sexually exploited or forced to work labor.
Oh my. And today we're going to talk about not just grown-up women.
Not just grown-up women.
But it gets younger than that.
It gets younger than that.
Children.
Unfortunately.
Children being trafficked. Wow, I don't know about you. That just breaks my heart. So tell me a little bit more. I mean, is this just a small problem?
No, this is actually a huge problem. As we spoke before in one of your shows on human trafficking, just plain human trafficking, without involving the children. There's 600 to 800,000 people being trafficked yearly, all right? And 18 to 20,000 of this are being trafficked into the United States.
18 to 20,000 people.
People.
Adults and children?
Adults and children. 80% are women and girls. 50% of that are children.
50%?
50% of that.
Oh my goodness, this is for commercial sexual exploitation or perhaps domestic.
Domestic labor.
Domestic labor. What good would a child be for domestic labor? Of course, I have to ask that other question too. What good would they be for sexual exploitation? But
well, you know, you will see that young kids have the little fingers, so they can work a lot better.
Okay.
In sweatshops, you know, in other countries as well as here. They are easier to get in under and clean everything on top and just make sure that everything is well and clean. So they are used too for labor exploitation, though is becoming a problem of older men wanting to have sexual relations with young children.
Oh, I know, and I would have to guess that with the increase of pornography and the increase of the internet and the increase of what's available to us as a society, what once seemed exciting is now boring. So we go to the next level of what could seem exciting to fill maybe this hollow place in our souls. But to go to children, well, give me a little more information about these children.
The children, we call them commercial sex exploitation of children, which is using a child for the sexual gratification by adults. And sometimes these childs, as you mentioned, they are used for prostitution, for pornography. They are used for sex tourism.
Tourism?
Yes, because here in our country, sometimes we're not, you know, older men or whoever using these young children are not able to do what they want. So they'll travel outside of the country. And
I've read about that, particularly to Thailand.
Particularly to
Thailand, that's what I've read
it's
about.
Increasing a lot too in the Philippines. Yeah. And then the other thing is using children for sexual survival for sex, you know? You provide them food and shelter and clothing in order of them giving you.
Well, what child even knows to say that they can say yes or no? I mean, a child doesn't know these things.
They don't know, but that's the only way that they will receive their food and their basic needs, then they will probably perform the sexual acts.
What choice? And we even know that's happening, not even with trafficking in, but the news seems full of this information where young girls have been kept in homes for years.
Yeah.
And the family didn't even know what happened to them. They just thought maybe they're
dead already.
Yeah.
Somebody, yes. And then these women are having kids of this man, and this man are still abusing the kids. It goes on and on. You know, we think of child exploitation as, you know, just a child taken away and that's it, and you wonder, you know, especially children here in America, why would they go, you know? They know better, they have an education here in America, but it is a big problem, domestic trafficking in America. They say that 450,000 children run away from home yearly
now
in the United States.
How many? 450,000?
450,000. This is not even internationally speaking.
This is a half
here.
a million kids run away from their families every year.
Yes.
Because they don't like mother and her stupid rules.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, no. No, not just that. You may wonder that's what it is.
Yeah.
But some of these parents are either abusing drugs,
right,
or abusing the children, or neglecting their children, or using their children, sexually exploiting them and selling them in order to get their quick fix.
This is really, I have 3 children. I can't even imagine selling my child for anything, but it's happening.
Yeah. It's the concept, especially a parent. I'm not one yet, but the concept is like, wow, you know, these kids are actually running away from home because they don't like the rules, you know. And I'm sure that there are some kids that just don't like the rules and they have amazing, wonderful parents. But most of the
don't.
victims that actually run away from home is because they're already being sexually abused, or already being physically abused or emotionally abused in their own home.
And I know that from my reading that women who have had children and then they get into new marriages, the likelihood of the children of the first marriage either to be a nuisance, therefore they're more abused because they're noisy or messy, and children, by the way, are noisy and messy. It's just who they are. Or they just don't fit in the family, or the new person in mom's life really didn't want to marry mom, wanted access to
the kids.
The kids. Oh.
And that's a big thing. And then you have these kids on the road. And actually, statistics say out of these kids that run away from home yearly, 1 out of 3 kids will be approached within 48 hours by a trafficker, or what we call here in America, pimp.
A pimp.
And they'll be like, hey babe, you know, I'm your daddy and I'll give you a hamburger, or I'll give you, you know, whatever that it's important for the child. They'll actually have their connection with the kid that the parents never have.
So they come across as this really safe person. So these pimps or traffickers are really experts in human behavior, especially of children. They know how to appeal to the child's need in a way that the parent has been too self-absorbed to even know how to do.
Yeah.
Wow.
I went to a conference where this lady, she's a former survivor of human trafficking, and she was speaking because she has a whole organization in New York, the GEMS, it's called the GEMS. And some of the girls just keep on running away from their place. You know, they have this awesome housing with young girls that's being through the same problem. And they just keep on running away from the home. And she actually sat down with a couple of them and asked, what makes you leave? You know that he's gonna put you to prostitute yourself so you can raise money for him, because he's not gonna give you any of that. You know that he's gonna beat you up if you don't make enough money that night and bring it home. But what makes you go out there and want to be with them? And one of them said, well, he's my daddy, you know? He sits with me every night and we have dinner around the table before we go to work. And work is them prostituting themselves on the street.
You know what, this is almost making me cry. I don't know about the rest of you out there in my watching land, but he sits around the table with me.
And have dinner.
Do you all hear that? Ladies of America out there, do you hear that? We sit around the table and have dinner. Something that simple.
For that child.
And nearly any child says warmth, security, even if the opposite side of that coin is abuse and prostitution, and it doesn't seem like it's such a difficult thing for us to turn a little bit of that around.
Yeah.
Wow. So tell me more.
Another one said, yes, he beats me, but he loves me. And she asked, well, how do you know he loves you? What does he do that proves that he loves you? Well, last time he beat me up, he brought me Yoo-hoo and Cheetos. Yoo-hoo and Cheetos. And the woman interviewing this young girl.
Cheetos. You mean the crunchy Cheetos?
Yes, the crunchy Cheetos. It's like, what do you mean? How is that proof of love? Well, he knows those are my favorite things to eat. And this, like I said, these kids come from neglected homes. They have been abused. Sometimes they probably went to bed hungry.
Yeah.
So having the Cheetos and the Yoo-hoo makes them feel safe. And since the average age into this industry is 12 years of age,
12?
here in the United States, 12. They don't know any better at that age. So anybody that show any little bit of love to them, they will fall for it.
Yeah. So now you've been able to actually visit with a victim here in the United States.
I have. She wasn't a domestic trafficked victim.
She was domestic.
She was actually trafficked from Egypt into our country. Her name is Shaima Hall. She has a beautiful story. I think we should listen to her.
Yes, let's listen to Shaima's story.
When first I even met like the family in that way, because I've seen them before when we went to visit my sister that worked for them. But this time we went to visit her, my mom ended up like, there was something going on, and she took my mom into her room and they were talking. I ended up walking in there, you know, and they were talking, and the lady of the house, she was really mad. And they were talking about my sister, and she wasn't even there when we went, my sister. We didn't know that. And she kept on talking forever, and then finally, you know, all I knew was like, my mom is leaving and I'm staying. And it was like, you know, what was going on, nothing had told me. My mom just told me, you know, you're just gonna stay here, I'll come and pick you up in like, you know, a few weeks or so. They're very nice people and it would be fine. So, I mean, I just went to visit my sister. I didn't expect to be staying, so I didn't have anything on me but what I was wearing. And my mom left. That was it. I think it was a few weeks, but it felt like months, and I just like started crying, and I called my mom, and she told me what my sister did. She had stolen money from them, I believe money or something else, and she ran away. And for them not to send her to jail, they wanted another child to stay with them in her replacement. And they wanted a young girl where they can teach her how to do things right and the way they want it to be taught. And that was it for that. And I ended up staying. I mean, my mom wouldn't call me or ask me how I'm doing, nothing like that. And I believe a year passed by, and my mom and my dad visit, and it was all very weird because they got like clothes with them to stay overnight. So I guess they knew what was going on. I didn't, and they stayed overnight with me in a place where I stayed with them, the family. And they were talking all day, and I met this guy I never met before, where they took me to get my picture taken. They took me to get my passport, and then where you get your passport, he said if this guy asks you anything, just tell him, you know, you're just going to visit, and we need to get you a passport because I'm gonna adopt you. And he took me even to his house, and he showed me like things in his house if they asked me question about it, and to see like that I've been there and I'm getting adopted by him. I want to say maybe like a day passed by, and they told me, well, you're gonna go live with them in America, and you're just gonna take care of the 2 boys, and you're gonna like clean bathrooms for a couple months, and you'll be back. Not for long, just to finish paying off what your sister took.
What do we do about this? I mean, here's this young woman. Tell me a little more about her story. Her parents are just giving her away.
Her parents are giving her away in order to pay for a debt of her sister stealing something from this rich family that the sister used to work for. So they bring out of the blue, the woman start yelling at the mom and say, hey, we need another daughter to replace what your daughter, took. Otherwise, we're going to call the police and your daughter's going to go to jail.
So the family gets the daughter, and then the daughter gets brought to the United States.
So the daughter works there for about a year, and then a year later.
How old is she?
She's just about 9. She said
9 years old.
She doesn't remember exactly, but it was just before she turned 9. And she worked for about a year, didn't see her parents, talked once or twice on the phone with her parents. Her parents explained what the sister did and that she had to work there to pay. But then they come back a year later and allow her to go to the United States, saying it's just a couple more months until we finish paying off your sister's debt. So she comes into America.
Wow.
And obviously illegally, with the whole fake adoption papers and so forth that this man was providing. And she comes in here, she ends up cleaning the house
for the
this
family.
Rich family in Irvine, California. Beautiful. If you go online and you look just at the bathrooms, just amazing marble bathrooms that she had to clean. And then you look at the contrast of where she had to sleep, which she had to sleep in the garage. She had an old dirty mattress, a bag with her clothes in, and a lamp. That's all you see in her room.
So she comes to the United States as kind of as this family's adoptive child. And now this family, there's children?
There's children. There's 3 other children, 2 older daughters that, for what I understand, she's saying they were already in high school.
Okay.
And she was only now around 10. She worked with them while she was in America too. She was 12. So she worked for 2 years period, making breakfast, cleaning the house, making sure the kids have their lunch to go to school, just preparing everything for the family. And she says in the video that she was the last one to go to bed. She couldn't go to bed till the kitchen and everything was in perfect order. And she was the first one to wake up and make sure that the food and everything was ready for the family.
So she's not allowed to go to school?
Not allowed to go to school, did not know English.
Does she go outside the house?
Minimal. She could go outside, just minimal amounts, just to make sure that the house outside looked clean too.
So she gets to go outside a little bit, and how do we ever find out about her? I mean, she's not going to go outside and speak Egyptian. Nobody's going to know what she's saying.
No.
She probably is scared to death to go outside because this is a country she doesn't know about, and they probably didn't take her with her when they went out to eat.
No.
And she was always in this garage. So how did she get out of this? Because I can look at her now and she's really beautiful and she's well put together and she speaks great English. And what happened to her?
Well, a neighbor noticed that there was a young girl staying at home every day.
A neighbor.
A neighbor.
A neighbor lady. A nosy neighbor lady. Do you get that? Nosy neighbor lady. Notices there's a young girl not going to school.
Not going to school, school-age child, staying in the house, looks like her clothes doesn't match with the rest of the family. It just doesn't feel right for what this neighbor says. It's a totally different contrast from the other kids and this child.
And so the neighbor reported her.
Reported her. Shaima says she gets a little emotional in the video about the whole situation and how she had to clean and how they used to put her down as a person, not even allowing her to wash her own clothes or the family clothes that she had to wash. But when he talks about the cops coming in and knocking on the door, she says, I remember, it was one of those loud knocks, like in TV, and then the door opens, the father of the house told me to go away, and they try to come in, he doesn't allow, they start yelling at each other, he locks the door on them, and then all of a sudden 10 minutes later, she said, about 10 minutes later, I had no idea what they're saying, I did not speak English at the time, but they come in, they have a warrant, she said, I was told they have a warrant. So they come in, snitch me out of the house, put me with an Arabic translator, and they say whatever they're doing is not right.
Well, this is at least a happy story.
Yeah. Whew. And I mean, the good part too is that she was well taken care of. She talks about how social workers, the police, the medical personnel, everybody was just so nice to her, and they helped her, build up her life. And they said,
beautiful.
You can trust us. And she felt that trust, which she actually never felt before.
Yes.
So she decided to stay in this country and persecute her offenders.
Her offenders. Well, that's good. So we talked about that some parents actually for survival of the rest of the family, will opt to give up a child. And sometimes these children are snatched and stolen and taken. Do cultures or religions in certain parts of the world think that that's okay?
You know, I have researched, and there is not one culture that, you know, abusing a child is okay. Not a belief in any culture, not a value of any culture that it's okay to violate a child and to, you know, just abuse a child like that.
Well, children are our future. I mean, that's how we know we go on.
Exactly.
And that's a beautiful thing. Well, I'm glad to know that. Now, where do all these children come from?
You know, these children come from broken families, like we talk about, especially here in the United States. They come from, they're sometimes kidnapped. We saw a few years back the case of Elizabeth Smart, that she was snatched out of her own home.
Out of her room.
Out of her room, yes. And she lived with this man, and she was so coerced and forced to believe that, you know, if she escaped, things were going to get worse, that she stayed. So somebody saw her in the street and said, "Hey, are you Elizabeth Smart?" And she's like, "Mm-hmm." And things went from there. But these children, you know, they're just so young, and they truly believe whatever their offender says that they are going to do to them. So a lot of them, obviously, they are abused by their family. So there's a whole interfamilial pimping, you know, putting the child out for adoption, or, you know, giving the child out for sexual exploitation. You know, here in America, it's becoming a lot the whole boyfriend thing. You know what I'm saying? Hey, if you love me, then you know, you get me some money, sleep with my friend, or make out with my friend, or do some other, you know, favor for my friend. You know, there's the whole enticement too. You know, if you're from a lower class and you don't have a lot of money to buy all this expensive stuff, then a girl, you know, another guy in school may say, you can have all that too. You know, all that you have to do is work for me. And then they go and sell themselves for their stuff, so.
Well, that's big. And we haven't really talked about boys.
Boys is starting to become a very big thing too, especially with the homosexuality that is starting in our country. We have all these props trying to pass, you know, laws about homosexuality. And so boys are starting to be used too, not just by homosexual men, but by women too. You know, wanting to have relations with a younger boy. You know, so they are being abused, though we see more them doing physical labor.
Okay, so more domestic.
More domestic, more agricultural labor, you know, in restaurants, you know, washing dishes and so forth. They are being brought for that also.
So, and you mentioned if children run away from home, what's the percentage that they're approached?
1 out of 3 in 48 hours will be lured into prostitution specifically. And out of the 450,000, that would be 150,000 kids yearly in this country.
Wow, in 48 hours. Well, I'm wanting to ask you as we're kind of nearing the end of the show. Here I am, lady living in my house, in my community. What can I do?
Well, just by paying attention to Shaima's story and knowing that a neighbor, you know, took the time to pay attention. And it took years, because if you think about it, she was working in that family for almost 2 years in that home in Irvine. So she suspected, she investigated, she kind of it seemed like she did her own investigation and said, no, this is for sure. And she called the National Human Trafficking Resource Center, you know, you can actually call your local, you know, police office and let them know, I think this child's being abused. And they do not, specifically for child, they do not play around in this country. So if you have a suspicion that a child, you know, is being exploited, it's your duty as a citizen of this country to report. And we have the missing phone number, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the 1-800-THE-LOST.
The Lost. 1-800-THE-LOST.
And if you don't remember
that one.
If you don't remember, call 911, call Child Protective Service. Just let them know something is not right, something is going on here. You guys got to come down and investigate. And it's, you know, it's confidential. It's not like they're going to say, oh, your neighbor next door said something. You know, if it turned out to be nothing, you know, at least you can sleep comfortably.
Yes.
You did something humane in such a unhumane,
in such a bad situation. And you know, you think somehow that this cannot infiltrate your community. And yet, I know Irvine's a pretty nice community. and this was a high-end home. So you think this bad stuff only happens in slums, but that's not the truth. You think only bad things like this happen in the city, but that's not the truth. It happens in the country. In fact, sometimes the country is more prone, I think, to this because the neighbors don't live as close.
And it's easy to hide a victim in the country.
And you can hide, and you live out there in the
space,
wide open spaces where nobody's paying that much attention. And yet, all of us, I think, have a duty to look around ourselves, to make this a better world, to protect children. This whole topic is really difficult, I think, for all of us to talk about, and it's difficult for us to imagine, and yet it's there. We know it's there, and it's big business.
It's big business. It's $33 billion yearly.
$33 billion.
Billion dollars.
Wow.
Yeah. And I want to leave with this note that once I heard some very intelligent men say that ask how the children are doing in your community, and you know how that community is doing. So if you have any question of what to do, just ask, how is the children in my community doing? Teachers, ask how your children are in school. Do they look well nourished? Are they hungry? Do they have any bruises? Ask, just ask how they're doing at home. Be part of their life, because it can make a completely different situation for them, a life experience for them.
So as a community member, I can be asking the teachers can be asking questions. I can be involved in my church, looking at the children in my church. I can be a nurse. You and I are both nurses.
Right.
We look at the kids that come through our emergency room. You get a good pulse of that. If in a hospital, in your neighborhood. I remember seeing one little child, and he looked like a ragamuffin, like he should be at the bottom end of a mop. And I knew that kid wasn't in a good home. He looked fuzzy and frowsy. His hair wasn't done. His coat wasn't right for the weather, and I went, oh, this is something happening bad.
And for healthcare professionals, it's our duty, but our duty if we don't report.
We're mandated to report.
We are mandated, so let's do it.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for coming today, for sharing this most painful topic, and yet something we all need to be very much aware of. Ladies, as you're sitting at home, I appeal to you to watch your community. Be out there and be looking. Be active. Take a walk. Snoop. I give you permission. So until we meet next time in the kitchen here for our next conversation, be well and stay happy. It's just the only life we have, so live every moment of every day.